Yeah. I think that's learning, forever learning.
I was like. Yeah. Can you hear me? Check. Yeah, all right, I can hear me. Okay, everybody, make sure you're getting food and you eat. While you eat, I'm just going to, we're gonna go over the December meeting minutes. I actually had a few, updates to it. I don't know if anybody else did. I don't know how you best want to do this, Cody. They're mostly just like little spelling edits.
Okay, I think you can, if you want, you can pass it with the additional grammar or spelling.
Okay. I was like, I had just a couple of spelling edits from like making a couple things and then I don't know if you guys want me to go through those. 4, from changing fin security to insecurity. 6, Emily During to adding a space in between there. 6, I was using not the Roman numerals correctly. Let's do a 6, 8, Ashlet to Ashley. And then during the adjourn, 7 February from 2 p.m. to adding in 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Were there any other December meeting minute updates? You like 2 minutes to glance over it?
Second.
All right, we had an Ashley motion and a Dietrich second. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go, usually doing this. I'm gonna go around and get eyes. I'm gonna call names is how we do it. Welcome Lee, we'll introduce, Lee and Quinlan will introduce you guys next. But how we do this is we will go around and I'll say everybody's name and then you give me an aye or nay or abstain. And then we'll move on. And that's just because we've been doing things hybrid and it just is a great way to keep everybody on track. So Cody.
Aye.
Tyler. Enrique. Quinlan. Lee.
Abstain.
Melissa?
I think they abstained because they were not there, right?
Oh, that's right. It's, you tell me, Ashley, what does it matter? We also learned, it doesn't matter. Great. Ashley.
Aye.
Dietrich.
Aye.
Sorry, Margit, sorry. Sorry, Margit.
That's fine.
And this is Emily. Aye. All right. It's like you were eating, Margit, so I wanted to skip over while your bite was in your mouth. Okay, and then I want to introduce, we have 2 new members. We have 3 new members. We have 2 with us in person right now. So Lee Meisel, am I saying your name correctly? Awesome. A City of Lawrence appointee. Connie sent out an email. I don't know, was that to the whole council or was that to everybody?
Council.
The whole council, all about Lee. And Quinlan, do you want to go by Quinlan? I know you as.
Quinn is great.
Okay, Quinn, great. Quinn Carter, also from the City of Lawrence, a City of Lawrence appointee. And then we also have a Casey Courts. I don't know this person yet. Also a City of Lawrence appointee. So we are really close. We have only 1 more seat. Is that correct?
No,
We're all full?
We're full.
We're all full. Woohoo! That might be the first time since I've been on the council that we were all full up, which is really exciting. We had a lot of people apply. But that means we also have a lot of availability for working groups. So your working group can add in people to it, especially from the school. We can kind of find out who people are still interested to help you out with that work. And then we also have an intern who may or may not join us tonight. Jasmine Johnson, our food systems intern with Douglas County, coming to us from the Haskell Indian Nations University School of Business. Natalia's here. Welcome. There's a seat for you over there. Go for it, Tyler.
doesn't matter, but we have to also.
Thank you. I normally have my notes in front of me when I'm sitting at my computer. Thank you so much. Yeah, why Tyler said it doesn't matter is because we learned that we do not have to follow Robert's Rule of Order, but we are going to try and do the best of we can with following that, which because it's just like a way to keep us on track and keep things organized. So with that, take a look at your agenda. It is a jam-packed evening. I'm gonna do my best. I've been sick this weekend, and Cody and I will tag team it as best we can and cut with Connie as our wonderful trustee staff member. So, take a look. Is there any additional things? Connie had sent an update today, moving some things around. This is the updated one?
Yeah.
Great, cool. Any changes? Dietrich?
What point in the meeting can we request items be placed on the next meeting?
Ooh. That Dietrich asked, when during our meetings can we ask stuff to be put on the next meeting agenda? I think either like, that's a good conversation at the end, or email Connie, Cody, or myself at any time. But like, I'd say like, right,
During this meeting, not only in this meeting, but at the end.
at the end, I would say, like, I know it's not really great, because things usually get rushed, but I'd say at the end would be a good time to add things. Keep them in your mind, write your notes down, and I'll remember that you have something you want to add for next month too. All right, with that. Oh. See, sorry. Oh, we're doing a little ahead. All right, I'm gonna take a pause and have a couple bites to eat. Keep eating, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and bringing stuff, sharing food together. And I'm Emily Lyson, by the way. I know Lee and Quinn both totally separately, so I didn't introduce myself totally at the beginning, but nice to have you guys here join us today. And Connie will start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I wanted to share. There's 3 green salad. There's an extra dish in here too. Thank you, Natalia. I wanted to share a little bit about Jasmine. She was not able to join us today, but we have a partnership with the Haskell Indian Nation School of Business. And Douglas County is the host office for one of their interns, and Jasmine Johnson will serve as the food system intern with Douglas County. And she's going to largely focus on updating the ethnic retail study that the FPC helped draft in 2019. So she's going to be driving around town and checking if those ethnic grocers are still open, and possibly also re-interviewing the owners with the same questions that the hire experts provided for that report. Additionally, she will be working closely with Tyler, just kind of following him around with Economic Development Working Group. And she's also interested in the Indigenous Food System Study and Action work. Yeah. So I think you'll get to meet her next month. Okay. I'll let you eat a little bit. One.
Adding teams.
We have Kathy Richardson on Teams.
Then I pushed join. Waiting on you.
Oh, really? Sorry, tech difficulties.
Okay.
How do you add people? That'll be so nice.
Yeah.
I actually don't know how to add people on Teams.
Yep.
How would you like me to do it?
I can,
I think
I could just take, I could take this if you don't need them to be up there.
yeah, I don't need them to be up there.
So I could take this with me. That's probably all I need, right?
Thank you. Where are the people?
Probably need like a little salad that just gets thrown on top of it. Okay. Probably is the life. Look. Drag out.
Sorry, tech difficulties. 1 second.
I also have three.
Here, let me resend it to you. Did you get it? I just Okay, well, we're checking tech difficulties. This meeting's being recorded, so I'm gonna go ahead
Ooh.
and do a quick update. Okay. So since we have 2 new members and a lot of you are already pre-season members, I'm just gonna briefly remind folks of what the Food Policy Council is. And so the Douglas Food Policy Council started in 2013. And at the time it was 23 members. And through a process of creating the bylaws, now we have 9 county and 7 city members. We are getting close to our 10-year of our food system plan, which leads the work of the Food Council. So the Food Council seeks to identify the benefits and challenges and opportunities for a successful, sustainable, and local food system in Douglas County, Kansas. So that includes Lawrence, Lecompton, Eudora, Baldwin City, and everything in between. The DCFPC's purpose is to advise elected officials on food system related policy issues and provide a community forum for local food system development. So I think just a reminder, a refresher, I think to focus on the idea that you as board members and as a board, a joint advisory board for the city of Lawrence and Douglas County is to advise elected officials on food system related policy. And also similar to the event that Food and Farm and Economic Development created, is it last week? Yes, oh my gosh, last week. They created a forum, a panel to convene food entrepreneurs and also policy enforcers to learn about and connect folks to those policies and regulations and also advance their work in the policies that they're trying to advocate for in their working groups. So mobile food vendors and access to commercial kitchens.
Okay, the reason I'm trying to log into Teams right now is because when we had our leadership retreat last month, we decided to, as we continue doing hybrid stuff, for Connie and myself or whoever's gonna be one of the co-chairs to be tag teaming, working on online. And so I said I would view the chat and so we can help tag team that. It's not working, it's fine, we'll figure it out. Kathy, thank you so much for being with us there online. And we'll do our best as we move forward here. I'm gonna introduce, just to kind of do a general overview of our working groups, and how this works to Quinn and Lee and anybody else who's new, who's kind of going, hey, I just jumped in. Our working groups are kind of created by our what we want to do. Like Tyler created the economic development working group. Natalia created the water working group. It's just like, it's what do we want to work on? What do you want to do? If you're in a working group and you're like, this isn't, this isn't what I really want to be passionate about. This isn't really what it's making. Think about something you want to be working on, and if that doesn't suit you, figure that out. So Food and Farm is building the local food economy and ensuring we maintain needed natural resources for continued local agricultural production. With this one, we're kind of hitting goals 1 and 2 a little bit. We're working with kind of a wide variety of things, and we kind of reach out into a bunch of different stuff. We'll go into more specifics of what we've been working on in 2023 and what we're continuing to work on and for 2024 later just doing a little introduction. Forward, which I can't remember what it stands for. Dietrich? Cody?
Food, waste, FO.
Food, waste. What's OR?
R is recovery.
Food
Oh, sorry,
waste.
So it's food recovery?
Food recovery, waste and reduction?
Yes,
Great.
every time. I practice it. I should get it tattooed.
Eliminating food waste through reduction, recovery, and diversion, which includes composting. Economic development is building an equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have our Indigenous Food System Study and Action Plan, 2024 to 2025 Planning Working Group. Oops, that didn't read well to me.
Yeah.
That's great. That's all right. We'll hear more about it later, hopefully. The Douglas County Health Plan Food Security. Everybody, we had that little video that Enrique and Connie sent out earlier. Partner liaison working group with the Douglas County Health Department focused on developing the food security section for the 2024 Douglas County Health Plan. And then we have water, building equitable water policies to support our local food system. So it's awesome. We have a lot of work going on. We're now full. We have so much excitement happening. And yeah, I'm really excited. I feel like, after last week, you just like, I'm really jazzed to tell you.
I'd like to just put a plug in for, there is an issue that is going to force the water group is gonna need to kind of hit the ground running on a big issue that affects a lot of different things. And so I would love to have some folks join up on that group.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalia. So there's a big thing coming up with water that let's recruit some people to join that working group and who's passionate about water in this community.
I don't think it was mentioned, but working group members don't have to be council members. So if you know anyone in the public that's interested in either like maybe a stepping stone to becoming a member or just want something, is interested in one of these topics, you can always.
Awesome. I'm gonna reiterate what Tyler said for the recording. Tyler said, as a reminder, working group members do not have to be food policy council members. It can be anybody from the community. And we do have stipends that can help people get onto those working groups and pay them to help join on that work. Anything else did I miss anything in your working group as I introduced that? Awesome. We're ahead, which is shocking for us. Cody, are you ready or do you want a minute?
Let's take a quick minute. I want to make sure, take a solid minute and I'm going to make sure that the presentation is available. If you're having a problem via Teams and sharing, it's possible I'll just have to talk loudly also.
Awesome. It's just relax.
If you have any luck, I did share it.
Take a minute, grab some extra food.
Yeah.
Talk to your neighbor. Go with my account.
Can you invite me to I don't
Cool.
have the Teams link anywhere, unless it's on Zoom. Is it on Zoom?
It's on link. It's on. Yes. I think it's on the website too.
It's on the food
Oh, the
policy council.
website, this
I didn't find it on there either.
That's
I tried this one.
no. So because I sent it specifically for Crystal.
Oh, okay.
Here, let me add you.
Yeah, if you can add me, then I can open it up. Hopefully I can. I'm having some weird thing.
I was gonna say it's Teams.
Teams, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm not sure how we're gonna help it. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna open up you guys can try and have it on both screens. Because you need it up here on the big screen. Her computer's connected to that, so my computer's gonna be on the top.
I think it's good because I'm sharing.
Okay, so yeah, you can share, go ahead and share with Connor.
What is that? Is that the presentation? Do I? No. Okay, I think I'm just gonna go like this. And then
Okay. And I can do that too, so you can just. I can narrow those lines. Yeah, cool.
Teams won't let me get past this screen, Connie,
it won't.
where it says welcome to Teams.
Yeah.
I think it's weird because normally I've actually used it using the web, but now it's like, no, well, I don't have any browser. I'm gonna download any browser. It's like, oh, wait, let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work. I have to.
Okay.
Connect, then we ran into a problem with reconnecting.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Now it's.
Teams is launching.
With Teams, that's what I got earlier
You
too.
got the same.
And then now it's just stuck on the like, on the screen that says like, where I choose if it's personal or business. And I click continue and it won't continue. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, mine is just kicked me out. I'm like, yeah, you can't figure it out.
I'll ask Starla. I'm meeting with her to like figure out how the transition with Teams is going. And I'll let her know like this happened.
I've used it for like I said, it's usually, I usually use it through my browser, but now I guess it's not supporting Firefox. Or Firefox doesn't support it now. It's like you can only use Google or
Maybe this will help with
I mean,
the advocacy.
Chrome. And then I'm like, okay, I have to download a whole new thing for the. Where?
Yeah, so do you want me to be committed on any at all or?
I think it's fine. I'm gonna record it and then send it to everybody that signed up. And apologize for technical difficulties as we're transitioning from Zoom to Teams. Yeah,
The people that, tried to join this, you're gonna have-
I don't have a Zoom link.
you don't have to explain it.
No, because for 2024, IT has asked us to transition to Teams, but they are still figuring it out on how that transition is going to go. So we're kind of guinea pigging.
Okay, okay. So your members that are.
Crystal, yeah, it's just one. I'll let her know.
It's like one of you guys from the other night last week. You left it like, I guess not.
Do you recognize it?
Copy.
So Crystal can't join the Teams.
I haven't gotten any text from her,
Okay.
but I think we should move forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna take, everybody, I'd like, give yourself 30 seconds and then I'm gonna get started on this presentation. It will be pretty low key. Please raise your hand and ask questions however often you would like to. I'm certain I will have missed important details and acronyms because there are just so many.
Oh. All these other things are later down there that I already said.
That's fine.
It's okay.
Just,
It's a retreat.
is the agenda notes that we wrote together somewhere online that I can look at? I can.
Okay. All right. So everybody, in case, for some members who have been here long enough, you'll remember that I have been doing up until this year, up until the very beginning of this year, I have been a fellow in the Johns Hopkins Community of Learning Practice. The Community of Learning Practice, or the COLP, as we've been calling it, is meant to be essentially, it has been a group of food policy councils gathered by Johns Hopkins to do equity work in food policy councils, but in the matter of we're constantly talking to each other, saying, what are you working on? What's going on over there? How are you solving this problem? What are you encountering? In addition to them providing us with education from all sorts of partners, lobbyists. Let's see, there's different think tanks, which is a thing I've never encountered before, but now I've been exposed to a think tank. Excellent, super. So the Johns Hopkins Community of Learning Practice, which is under the Johns Hopkins Center for a More Livable Future, which is in collaboration with the Mississippi Food Justice Coalition, which is mostly run by the Mississippi Food Policy Council. In Mississippi, which we did go to, and I'll probably talk at length about that because it was an important part of the development of the team. But let's move forward. I will advance. Okay, so does anybody remember 2021, the food policy conference that was supposed to happen in Kansas City? That was meant to be the kickoff of this community of learning practice. And so in 2021, in September, there was going to be this Kansas City food policy conference. And of course, as we all know, it would all happen via Zoom. But how many of us actually were part of the council when that happened? Tyler, I remember you were there. Connie, did you get to do any of the conference? It was great. It was lots of fun. They still managed to integrate some parts of Kansas City. There was a local poet and activist who got to do some performance, which was really nice. And then from there, we pivoted and we did a lot of Zoom calls. So the structure, the general setup is, so it'd be monthly meetings, at least one monthly meeting of about 3 hours where we all meet via Zoom. And then we would also have these power hour sessions. So what was interesting, and I'll go back to this, is that the Johns Hopkins Community of Learning Practice had therapists on retainer. And so essentially every session you'd open with a like, okay, everybody, let's take 5 minutes and do stretches. And so that would be a really nice way, especially since you're about to be on Zoom for 3 hours, of sort of getting grounded, which is what they would call it. In addition, throughout the session, there's a whole breakout room in any Zoom meeting where if you're like, hey, look, I'm having a terrible time, or I'm struggling with policy work because it feels like I'm just grinding myself against a machine that doesn't want anything to change, they're waiting for you, which has been really lovely. And I honestly will come back to that because I think it's something that is probably really worthwhile. But it also, of course, probably to a lot of us, because we work in a government policy council, we're like, yeah, but how do we pay for it? Let's see. When we first signed up, there were stipends dispersed to each policy council for each member. So we sent 2 members. There was myself and Laura McCulloch, who was our health. She was at LMH, right?
Douglas County Health.
Douglas County Health. There we go. Whew. But she did. Let's see. We made it about a year, and then Laura had to step away because Laura's position changed and Laura moved to Kansas City. And then Ryan Bowersox did a couple months and went with us to Jackson, Mississippi at the 3/4 mark of the convening of the COLP. And then there'd be homework and different sorts of things, but primarily lots of sitting and floating heads in Zoom. Probably a dozen to 15 food policy councils, organizations, and nonprofit organizations, each sending at least 2 members in addition to the convening team. So usually fluctuating between 30 to 50 people via Zoom. So the big one that happened most recently is that they flew us all out to Jackson, Mississippi, because Jackson is the headquarters of the Mississippi Food Policy Council. But it's also because the Mississippi Food Policy Council is there, it's also the headquarters of the Mississippi Food Justice Coalition. And so part of the history of that is they have a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, which I'll come back to again because that makes a big difference in how they operate. But they have a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and they assign fellows for 4 different regions of Mississippi throughout the Delta. So there's the North, the Coast, the South, and then there's the Chickasaw and Choctaw representation from part of the Delta also. So those 4 regions are part of the Mississippi Food Coalition, and that's part of what they brought us to Jackson to meet some of the fellows, to talk about how they did grant funding through Kellogg, to talk about finding other options for funding for food policy councils and equity work. And also, I think it's in a different slide, but Jackson, Mississippi is the blackest city in America. Over 80% of the population is Black. And it is also, when we went, they've just passed that House bill that created a separate Capitol Police Force. And so this was difficult because it meant that they essentially created a city within a city that led to all sorts of extra policing, extra scrutiny of Black folks in the city, because a lot of the wealth is held by white landowners who own churches and buildings and businesses, but they live in the environs of Jackson rather than in the city proper. And so that also affects, there's an ongoing water crisis. There are lots of people will point out, well, some parts have been saved and some parts have not. But like in Flint, there is an ongoing like potability of water. Is it safe? Boil orders going on all the time. And it's tense. However, there are also good things. 2 of the things that I was exposed to that I had never encountered before were Mississippi pot roast, which is, for those of you who don't know, so it's something like chuck that gets braised with 2 varieties of peppers and then ranch seasoning. So just like a good roast, a good braising roast, chuck is a good place to start. And then, so usually it depends on, some people will just go for banana peppers, some people do like the, pepperoncini, exactly. And then ranch seasoning, and it's really good. It's really dead simple. And then Delta tamales, there's a tradition of tamales in the Delta that are really delicious. Everybody has a different sort of style, depending on who you're talking to. We got to eat at this place called Footprint Farms, and so we were convened. There were members of the Mississippi Food Coalition is very deeply ingrained in that community. They are very proud of their community, and so they took us to all sorts of different locations in Jackson, which is, for those of you who don't know, also a major part of the civil rights struggle. So that's also like where Medgar Evers is from. And so we got to eat dinner with Medgar Evers' family, which was really fascinating because it was also very close to the anniversary of his assassination. It was really neat. It's funny because there's an article that was written called "You Just Had to Be There." I get quoted a lot in this article, which is weird, but I did leave a link, and so that's another one of those. A lot of us who went there were really pleased that even though the conference never happened, we actually got to convene. And so another thing that will also show up later is reminding people that actually coming together and getting to eat food like this in Food Policy Council makes a pretty big difference. So what does it account for? What does it all add up to for us to have done this 2 years of work, to have been sitting in Zoom meetings talking about networking and what is racial equity and what are leadership circles and why should you have caucuses for different parts of your Food Policy Council? We're like, we've got the Black Caucus or the Farming Caucus, which is a lot of what our working groups sort out into in some ways, where whatever sector we're representing sometimes will affect what working groups we get interested in. I think that's less true now. We've got a pretty diverse set of working groups now. So I think that's a little less true, but there was a while where it was Aggies. And then forward. There was the racial equity group for a little bit. When we first began this process, there was the racial equity group that did change for good reason. And so some of it is, okay, I did this, what did I bring here? And so we have been working, some of us know, about these lived experience grants. And so that first began as like a K-FAN mini grant. And so Bonnie and Tyler helped set it up, and then I also helped pitch it. But we started getting money to give people money for their time and expertise, whereas normally maybe the county might go to them and just say, well, how are you struggling? Thank you for telling us. And hopefully that will lead to longer term city and county policies. And part of that is also the Johns Hopkins Food Policy Network is starting to conglomerate a whole bunch of which food policy councils do these stipends, how much is it, under what conditions. And so that was one of the things I got to use a draft of to help organize my response for KFIP. We are going to be talking about our leadership models. There are all kinds of ways of talking about how we organize ourselves in a structure that affects how we set our policy, what our agenda is. And so one of the big things is whoever's in leadership, it's just so easy for us, like Dietrich, you were saying, when do I get to add something to the agenda? When can I ask that I'm interested in putting something on the agenda? Once you're in the leadership, it's easy. We just send each other a note. We go, there you go. And so there's so much that we talk about the Kansas Open Records Act and making sure that we're being transparent and open. But just due to the way that the structure is built, it's just so easy for leadership to say, well, this is something that I know is happening and I just need to get it on the agenda. And so that's one of the, it's a double-edged sword. It can make it a little bit easier because it means that you don't have to constantly be going, hey, everybody, put this on the agenda, but it also means that it is affected by the scope of whoever is sitting behind the agenda trail. Sure, I'll take it. Yeah. Okay, and then equity integration, part of that is also, that's why we also dissolved the racial equity working group, because the whole point is if we silo equity and how we talk about what is justice, what is fair, what is good, and you say, okay, there's only two people that think about that and everybody else can just not bother. It doesn't really suit us. It is a structural problem. And so the idea is everything we do should be able. What's the word I want? It should be integrated into the structure that the things we do produce at least, if not equitable results, we have the tools to evaluate, is this equitable? Who does this serve? Who does it benefit? And really, please do ask questions, because otherwise I'm just rambling. Yes.
Are we aiming for procedural equity or are we looking for outcome-based equity?
That is an excellent question that we have to ask ourselves. And the answer is probably both. There are consequences to being a government organization. And so one of the things that is also important to point out is that many of the other food policy councils in this network are either they're nonprofits or they were government organizations that became nonprofits. And so that's where we have some of the procedural problems are the Kansas Open Records Act. Like, how that affects how we operate. It is also meant to be a tool for transparency, but again, the double-edged sword. And so some places like the Maine Food Policy Council, they went through the process of being a government food policy council and became a nonprofit and talked about like, here's all the reasons why that was difficult. Here's why we would do it again. Here's why we wouldn't do it again. They lose, of course, some of their staff support, which is something that we rely upon heavily. But it also means that the way that they spend money is different. Like it means that they can spend money more than once on food, for instance, or they can disperse those funds directly to members of the community. What did I get out of it? Okay, one, like I said, therapy integrated into policy work is great. If everyone could afford it, just do it. It's so nice. I mean, it's also we talk a little bit about when it comes to lived experience, there's a lot of doing equity where it often falls onto marginalized people. And so you go to the people who struggle with barriers and you go, we want you to do the work of taking the barriers away from yourself. And then we're going to put a feather in our cap and go, huzzah. And especially in Jackson, it was something else. So this is personal now, but actually my family comes from the South. And so after the Jackson trip, I made a quick little 2-hour detour to Vidalia, Louisiana, which is just on the other side of the river from Natchez. Yes. And then so my family's from one of the poorest counties in the poorest state in the United States, which is Louisiana, in Tinsaw Parish. And so a lot of talking about race and water and food and who has access to land. Really, for me, once I get down to Jackson, is just as real as it is here. And so being able to go to therapy and be like, this is some kind of thing, isn't it? Was very nice. And I will forever be saying, if there's any room in the budget for such a thing, let's do it. Another thing is, I'm still real new to policy and doing a lot of the policy work, learning the jargon, trying to catch up with like Robert's rules and procedure, and I still can't keep up. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about is there are lots of skills that we all bring to the policy process. And Tyler, you brought it up, I think 2 meetings ago, but we talked about how you're a connector. And that's like one of the things we talk about in like, what are the roles in a network? And so one of the things is just being somebody who goes, you should really go talk to so-and-so. And that's just as valuable as being able to do policy that's, policy wonk policy of, I think you should know that there is a statute from 20 years ago that affects this particular plot of land. And then unvarnished communication. One of the other things is we spend a lot of time being in a policy council, having only so much time. I think it can be really easy to be like, well, we should be cordial, we shouldn't argue, and we should make sure we're all agreeable. Honestly, if we're always agreeing all the time, we probably aren't doing very good work. It means that we're not coming to the table with everything that we know. And that was actually something that came up during the Kansas Sky Energy Center recently. And so that's been something that we all learned a lot about what we care about, what we're interested in, what we're trying to do. Would it have been nice if it were frictionless? Sure. But I think being able to have conflict is really lovely. And it also means that we trust each other, at least enough to disagree and then come back the next time. But the thing I learned that's a big deal is money. A lot of what the Mississippi Food Coalition was doing was beautiful and great, but between Johns Hopkins and the Kellogg's money, they could fly us out. They put us up in the West End. Like the Douglas County Food Policy Council did not need to match funds, did not need to offer funds for me to do any of these things. All of the travel expenses and hotel expenses were covered by the community of learning practice. And that's a pretty effective tool. And they have it because they have so much money from Kellogg and they don't do any grant reporting. Part of this is also they found their funding partners and they said, look, you want us to have an impact in the region. Here's how we think we need to do it. And so instead of doing the grant reporting every year, instead of saying, okay, this is going to dissolve, they said, no, we need to do long-term funding. It has to be enough money that it makes an impact for each of the fellows in the region. And it needs to be ours. And they got the money and they continue to do the work. And in fact, we'll probably see members of the COLP come visit. One of the leaders is Noel Diedla, who helps run the Food Policy Council and the Coalition. And there's a very good chance that within the next year or two, Noel Diedla will visit everybody in the states who was part of the COLP. And that will mean coming here and we'll get to meet her. But money makes a big difference. It means that they can put therapists on retainer, means they can fly people out, means they can host you, means they can get all the local food and pay local vendors. As much as I wish I could say there's some magical Band-Aid, there's not. And so that's another thing where we're also a little bit tied. Because again, how we get to spend money, like even with the grants that we get, how we get to spend money is a little, we've got hoops to jump. And so that's where also, when it comes to structure and looking forward, are there ways, are there tools that we can actually like, okay, we've got a little extra money this year. How do we actually get it into the hands of people who need money? How do we feed people? How do we make sure that food is at the core of what we're doing all the time? Anyway, that's a ramble. Whew. Okay. So, a couple things that maybe, if I had given a chance, I might like sort of ease in and talk to everybody about as we continue moving forward are we made agreements at the beginning of our community of learning practice where everyone got together, spent an entire session only on talking about how do we govern ourselves. And so we are given the bylaws and we have given the idea that we're meant to be doing Robert's rules and this is what it looks like. But like we said, Robert's rules is more of a guiding structure. We could talk more about like, okay, do we want unanimous consent? We are going to have to reconsider our bylaws in the next year, 2 years? Right. Exactly. And so as we're going over our bylaws, we can actually be a little intentional over how do we want to relate to each other? What are the rules? How do the meetings work? What works for us now? Circle structures and digging into sociocracy. Sociocracy is something that the Hampshire Food Policy Council of Western Massachusetts did. It's a little geeky in the sense that it's closely related a little bit to like intentional communities. It's got a little bit of that area of Massachusetts apparently is what they call behind the tofu curtain. There's a little bit of hippie influence out there. And so part of that is talking about, again, unanimous consent, but also splitting, instead of calling them caucuses, all the circles, so there'd be a leadership circle, and the working groups would then be considered also part of the circle. But the idea is that you talk more about overlapping, and you can be part of more than one thing, more of a Venn diagram than buckets, which doesn't make sense without diagrams and cues, but it's something I hope to come back to. And then more food. I just think more eating and more like reasons for us to come together and have a nice time is always going to be good. And there's a lot of good stuff to eat around here. Okay, things that it would be really neat to do, but may not be an option for the immediate future. even if we can't do therapy in the sense of having someone sit there and be ready to talk to you, I think there are probably tools that we can put in a Dropbox and put into our hands, so it's easier for us to communicate, ways for us to talk more about like, how do we have conflict? How do we encourage conflict, healthy conflict in the council, so that we make better policy without meetings coming apart, that sort of thing. More money, just figuring out like, okay, how much, like, we have this grant, which we are so grateful for. Excellent work. But it also means, what are other ways we can either ensure that our budget, because we are one of the only funded council, because we have an annual budget.
Yeah.
But every year it's still the same amount.
Yeah.
And so making sure either maybe there's a way to secure more funds, or maybe there's a way to secure funds from a different partner, but a way that we can continue to do things as things get more expensive, because that is also going to happen, because we want to send people for professional development. We want people to be able to be paid for their time and their effort here. And there are going to be many different tools, and some of them we are working on and already have, and some of them we're going to have to invent. And then also just, this is something that I would also like to do, is simply networking with other food policy councils, having them visit, having them be like, going to them and being able to just connect a little better and deeper. You usually will get better work done when you're sitting next to somebody. Okay, so what is going to happen next is we're going to discuss the rotational leadership model, which is the model that we brought up in the leadership retreat. We're going to talk about, okay, what are some options for making sure that other people can get brought into the leadership role? And then obviously there's going to be the food system update that's coming up. And so again, we're going to be talking about what does equity mean now? We've done some work. How do we make sure that each of those steps continues to increase the amount of access and decrease barriers? And then building relationships, that one's self-explanatory. That's it. I have talked more than enough. Does anyone have any additional questions? Detroit. I genuinely don't know.
A long time ago, Johnson County, and it just never happened, it never materialized, but I think.
Wait, say that again.
We had a conversation, this was back when Sarah Hartley. Her and I had talked to Johnson County about partnering together, and now we hope to make, but it's sort of the pandemic and never reestablished this. And I can still
It raises a good point though, because Brian Safferty, who's there to lead the Food Innovation Labs, will be visiting next month or April, I forget. In April, he's on the Johnson County Food Policy Council. And he was saying how last week's speaker gave him ideas to take back to his council, Johnson County, and therefore, that might be the beginning of a good connection with Brian, and then talking to him about maybe doing something else,
Yeah, our relationship through, so we also attend monthly meetings with the Kansas Food Action Network, which organizes like all. Yeah, statewide.
Which everybody's invited to attend anytime on the council.
So we do have a lot of connection that way, too. We bounce a lot of ideas off each other, so we are doing connections, and we've had councils from across the United States actually reach out to us. We're one of the first councils in Kansas, or the first council in Kansas, so I say we do a good job, we could always do better.
And it's also worth pointing out that a lot of people, especially people in the community learning practice, they use our food system plan as a model nationwide. And so that's something like, oh, you're from that council? I look at your quick guide all the time. I'm like, excellent to know. Very good to know. So now what we need to discuss is this potential idea for a rotational leadership model. So right now it's been Emily and myself doing chair, vice chair responsibilities. However, at the leadership retreat, we also discovered that we will need to vote. Either way, whatever we decide about the rotational leadership model, every year we do need to vote a chair and at least one vice chair according to bylaws. And so. Right.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah, I talked
I talked to Kim about it a little bit, and I think like, since, Cody has been doing this work and the FPC has committed, to this equity work with John Hopkins, and it's been 2 years in the making. She said that it's okay for us to have a trial year, and, we don't have to vote. If you choose to do the rotational leadership model, you don't have to vote the vice chair every single time, but you can vote today to agree to try this as a test model for a year and then reconvene.
So what we have in front of us, the idea would be not an assigned vice chair, but essentially there would be a sign up. And Connie has developed a little, is it Excel? It's up here. And so what one would do is look ahead and go, okay, what month do I think I'll have a little bandwidth where I can sit in on the one leadership meeting and sort of be available to help run that month's meeting. And so that way there's, as Ashley pointed out in the leadership meeting, if it were assigned, there are going to be months where you go, look, I'm farming. I'm at capacity. I can't go do that thing. I can barely do the 3 things I'm supposed to be already doing. So this way that you can look ahead and go, okay, I know my general schedule and I think that this month will be available, or maybe something will open up and you'll say, hey, look, I see no one signed up for vice chair. I'd like to do it this month. In this system, my understanding is that the co-chairs would at the first leg would be still me and Emily, and then we'd have the vice chair rotating monthly. Any questions about that, or have I misrepresented what we're doing here?
It's good. I just want to clarify, like, if you pull out your little sheets and has the rotational model, and the back also has the roster of all the Good Policy Council members, you will see in the roster that there are some county appointed members and there are some city appointed members. So then you flip it back and there's the example of the rotational model. So like the dark blue would be the co-chairs. And for this round, if you choose to, you would both, Cody and Emily would like to continue to co-chair.
Mhm.
And then halfway through the year, you would vote for a new set of co-chairs. And you see that is one from the city and one from the county. So it would have to be a city appointed member and a county appointed member. And then the rest of the light green is the rotational vice chair, which you would choose your month. Does that make sense?
It said, the numbers on this page, on the column. Oh, don't worry about them. They don't grade on your position. We had a whole bunch of different ideas we talked through at the leadership meeting, and it was just about rotation. It's a placeholder for anything.
Dietrich.
If I'm reading my material correctly, this is listed as option A. Is that the only option we're considering as the full committee?
That is the only option we are currently considering as a full council. There were other options that we floated in the leadership meeting that felt
More chaotic?
more chaotic or not easy to jump into. So this way there's continuity while we get more people in and out of essentially, like I said, the leadership circle. So someone can come in and sit in. Otherwise, it would have been a little unstable where all of a sudden everything is different.
You also let a little more flexibility with, like, if you're not sure if you want to do it, you're not locked into like 6 months or 3 months, it's like 1 month.
The vice chair role is like,
Yeah.
you sit down on like one extra meeting a month. And then help out if like both co-chairs are capacitated.
And also another reason it looks like this is that this fits a little better into our bylaws. And it's possible that maybe that as we try these things out, maybe there will be a different restructuring that we'd like to do where there's several chairs at once, or instead of chairs, again, we call it something else. And maybe there's 5 people doing leadership a month, but in the bylaws as it is, that doesn't really fit.
And so it'll be the chair and the vice.
And 2 vice chairs. And so that's why we sort of have the co-chair, vice chair. But if we wanted to do more than that, I think it would stretch the bylaws to an extent that we were uncomfortable with. Is that fair to say?
I think I just wanted to add that, the reason, one of the equity reasons that we're having a rotational vice chair is because, like Cody mentioned, the agenda making train. That means that right now, Emily, Cody, and I get to set what happens. And of course, like Tyler and others do influence the agenda. Those who have the energy or know to contact us do influence the agenda, but rotating who has access to that meeting that shapes the next agenda, but not also the next meeting, it shapes the whole year.
Mhm.
So it gives everybody in the Food Policy Council an opportunity to shape the work, to be at a table that you were not.
And also this year specifically, because we're doing the run up to essentially doing the legwork for the next food system plan. I think a lot of the things that go on our agenda and the legislative priorities are really going to shape what the next food system plan looks like. So there are good reasons why this year in particular, we want to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to influence what gets set on the table. So really at this stage, the action item would be, we vote to see twofold. One, we vote to see if Emily and I continue as co-chairs. And then two, we vote to see if we adopt this model. And again, it would mean that the co-chairs, we would at least be here for another until the end of June. And that would mean that at least this continues to function this way, but it means there's opportunity and encouraged opportunity for each of you, or a certain number of you, to come in and get your teeth into leadership also.
If option A fails, what's the model?
If option A fails, what we would do is essentially we go back to the annual system of at least the two co-chairs. And then maybe, most likely, we'd immediately go back into leadership and then try and figure out, okay, what are other options? And maybe if there's some discussion over why option A, this particular model, is undesirable, hopefully we can come up with something else that again increases the number of people who are able to get their hands on the proto agenda and set the table, like I said.
Having two of you as co-chairs would comply with the bylaws.
Is my understanding? Yes.
I think for this year, talking to staff and administration, they are fine with us trying out something new, and particularly because the Food Policy Council and Douglas County committed to participate in this very particular equity training for our council that took 2 years, and this is what came out of it. So for that reason, there's a flexibility to create this year of testing out new leadership models.
Go for it.
This model greatly expands the amount of representation or participation. I'm imagining the downside is that everybody comes in for 1 month. I mean, like deer in the headlights, bumbles around, and then cycles back off to bumble around a year later.
I'll say when I joined as vice chair, I bumbled hard. And now you guys voted me in this chair. So the thing is that it's, it takes, not knowing what you're doing first to then start. I really learned on the job jumping in, and was nervous to do it, but I did it, and it's, clearly I'm very informal, and clearly very yes, although I have my formal mustard tile today. And it's, it's just, I think it takes all leadership styles, and I mean, Ashley brought up a good point. We had a leadership meeting last month that not everybody's gonna want to be chair. This way it gives everybody a chance to have a voice, even if it's just like popping into a meeting, and like you said, it gives everybody a chance to at least like have that opportunity. but you don't have to be chair then, you know, it's like, we have to rotate, and somebody's gonna have to be chair, and it can't be the same person constantly. So, this way it gives everybody a chance to be vice chair and see a little. Maybe you'll be willing to. The one thing I have to notice is that like. This will make city people have to be in leadership more often. Because we only have 7 city versus 9 county, that's just an observation. I don't think that's a bad thing or whatever, usually because.
City appointed, that doesn't sort of.
City appointed, yeah,
County people.
city appointed people is, yeah, is clearly what it is, yeah, definitely what I meant. Just saying that, like, if we split that up, I mean, it's. The seven comes up more often than 9 comes up, that's all.
I will say that this model kept the co-chairs for at least 6 months, so there's stability there, because there were some that changed chair every month. And that sounds like that, chaos, because you get good at being a chair by being a chair for more than 1 month. So like having co-chairs that are there for at least 6 months is gonna add some stability to that. Even if your vice chair comes in not knowing anything, like it's a relatively being vice anything generally, like you're second or third in command, so you get to see that side of it without actually having to take a lot of responsibility, which sounds terrible, but that's how you learn.
And that's what I wondered though too about this 6 month changing over too. And maybe it's like, you know, past the time.
And overlap.
Kind of stagger, right? So then could be if Cody was now more of the co-chair and he'd be the chair with another person under me. Co-chair.
I was thinking that too, so there's like, you know, a lot of times boards have an outgoing president as well as non-incoming. Yeah,
And
either.
everything is pretty, what I've seen, they have a president-elect, a past president, and all 3 of them are rotating through. Somebody who's learning, someone who's doing, someone who's advising.
The way they were really well.
I don't think the co-chair positions though, I don't think it means that they have to change. It just means that we have more opportunity, people have more opportunities to step down or step up during
The
the
same
year.
with vice chair, so if nobody signs up, you can do it 2 months in a row.
Right.
Because this is on a volunteer basis.
Right, those are all very good points, yeah.
And Connie, is there anything that would keep us, let's say that someone has decided they're going to be vice chair in April, but someone else is also available? Is there any reason that person couldn't sit in on leadership meetings if they're like, I can't be vice chair? Okay, so that way maybe there is someone who's like, okay, if the 2 chairs are sick, I'm going to be the one where the buck falls, but there is someone else who's like, oh, but I sat in on that meeting and I also know what's going on. So it sounds like there is lots of room to play.
Just the cap is,
Yeah.
What Connie said was the cap is quorum,
like on there.
So,
under quorum, she means.
so that means once we have a certain number of membership in any meeting.
Less than 8.
Less than 8. So this is also something that's true for working groups. And I'm talking to you two specifically. This is, once we hit quorum, then it's an open records meeting and it has to be public. It means that there has to be, it
has to be announced ahead of time.
Yeah, it starts getting inconvenient. And so that's why some of the working groups are also split in such a way that it means they're a little more flexible for those reasons. And another reason why leadership is that way.
Got it.
They have to also have a leadership role as a vice chair.
It's
Is there a requirement that everybody be a vice chair?
So there's no current requirement, and that's not part of this plan where it's saying because you are the chair of a working group that you must be a vice chair. This is all voluntary.
Perhaps as a friendly amendment. Given that the vice chair is only on for 1 month, they get to see everything. Perhaps they could be responsible for the one item on the agenda, where they could focus. get a little bit more traction without being overwhelmed.
This seems reasonable. Does it require
Challenge by choice.
Does it require amendment? Yeah,
I like that. Execution, I guess, maybe.
yeah. Actually, we keep leaning on you because you said some great things in the leadership meeting, but can you take a moment and quickly talk about the difference between the policy and the bylaw? Like that's, the bylaws say something.
Bylaws are we have to follow. Policy is something, are basically rules that we can kind of rule. A policy is something that.
I think you use guidelines and I think that's
It's
probably,
a guideline, so like, I'm gonna use Farm Bureau as an example because that's where I had the most experience. We took our bylaws and are kind of working on taking them down to bare bones because there's some things that are gonna change based on the composition of your board or your council. So like we took out the way we talked about our travel stipend for things and made it a travel policy. So it can change and be flexible. Bylaws are not necessarily super flexible. Like they are kind of in this sense, it's the trial period. So your policy says it's gonna be more flexible, that can change as your council changes. That doesn't, and especially because bylaws are hard to change. Like ours have to go before the county commission and the city commission in order to be changed. It takes 6 months. Like in other organizations, they might have to go before your voting body, like at a yearly meeting, and they have to be announced ahead of time. Policy, we can change meeting to meeting. So I feel like saying the vice chair is going to run, item C on the agenda, that's a policy thing, and that's just an execution, and we can just decide that. Does that help?
Yeah, really helpful.
For bylaws on what we do. If I'm understanding right, bylaws are what we do, policy is how we do it. So bylaw says we have a president or a co-chairs and a vice chair. Policy is, this is how we divvy up the roles.
With that example, yes, but I would say sometimes bylaws are also how we have it. It just depends on your bylaws. So I would say that's not always true, and your example, yes.
and actually it's a great example because the other problem is right now our bylaws say that we have to vote. And so that's one of the reasons why, even though we would like, even if you just want to keep the status quo, we still need you to vote us in, because that's what the bylaws require. And so that would be another thing that in the long-term consideration, we would need to change the bylaws. So in the meanwhile, we wanted to trial something out. And this is the general shape of what we think is probably what will work for us.
You make a motion? Option A?
For this, we will need to make motions if we want to adopt this sort of rotational model. And again, it would mean that there are going to be 2 co-chairs, and then that means that there's going to be a vice chair who has some imprimatur, but can be flexible and will be on a voluntary basis as allowed by the council.
Move that we adopt option A, which includes co-chairs rotating every 6 months, vice chair rotating every month.
Do I have a second? Okay, now we're going to vote.
You got it.
Okay. We'll just go around, starting with Dietrich. Just give me, do you want me to have them read everybody's names out, or are you okay with just going around in the circle?
Circle's fine.
Circle's fine.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it.
Is there somebody on Zoom?
It's just Kathy, I think.
Yeah.
Sustainability office is almost all, a bullet sick, otherwise she would be here too.
And then both.
There's no magic,
Yeah.
but like.
Right.
The leadership meetings are not scary, setting the agenda is not scary, this all would just. So
Yeah.
I would say like. At least I have never felt, oh my gosh, it's like the hardest thing in the world to do is just getting yourself organized.
It's like, once you do it the first time it'd be a little intimidating, but it's really just like hanging out with us. We've already declared that we should be on for together, actually. But it's pretty much just like hanging out with us and going like, yeah, what do you want to talk about this next month? What's coming up? And it's again, yes, we are, you know, county, city, and that might be intimidating to some people, but it's, look, am I intimidating you?
And honestly, the more time you get behind the curtain with staff like Connie, the better you're going to do. So like, it's really, I do encourage it. Like, I was also terrified. I'm like, this is impossible. I don't know any of these things.
Yeah.
I'm already an imposter, now an imposter behind the curtain.
Yeah.
No, everything's fine. Connie did remind me though, we also, so the second thing we do need to vote on is because we're going to adopt option A, means now we need to vote in for the first 6 months our co-chairs. And so at the moment, Emily and I are the ones with our hats in the ring. Obviously, if someone else is like, no, it's me this time, then please. Otherwise, we would have you vote on Emily and myself to continue as co-chairs for the next, at least until, for the next 6 months, or do we want to go till June? Okay, then let's say until June, and then we'll reevaluate, and it can be that it continues to be us, or someone rotates in and someone rotates out. But at the moment, we are saying that that someone needs to make a motion to vote us in to serve at least until June, as is.
I move that Emily Cody serve as co-chair in June.
Okay, we're gonna go around one more time, starting with Dietrich.
Aye.
Aye.
Right, cool.
Second.
Natalia.
Natalia.
Thanks, everybody. Again, this is also another one of those things is as we try this out, please, if you have an idea, if you're like, hey, actually, I think that this will help us organize, or maybe we need to have different kinds of leadership structures. It doesn't, anything that you can think of is worth considering. We're in an evolution season. So bring it on. What's next?
Pretty much stuff I already talked about, but I can just clarify a couple things. Thank you, Cody, and
Of course.
for all that. All right, so I kind of went over this a little bit. We're gonna talk about agenda, structure of running meetings and procedure. I'll reiterate. Okay, so we had talked about how we don't have to follow Robert's rule for Lee and Quinn and others who might be new to what that is. It's really just the like formality of exactly what we just did and how we voted. Of like, okay, somebody makes a motion, somebody makes a second, and then we go around. And there's like very specific things on how we do that, and Ashley's an expert on it and keeps us going on it. But anyway, we found out we don't have to use those. But we do have, like, the main thing we really have to pay attention to is that we have to inform the public of big topics that we're gonna talk about. So Dietrich's like, hey, when can I bring up something for next month? But we've also had things where it's like, hey, middle meeting, hey, I wanna bring up something now. Well, if you're gonna bring up a huge topic that like the public wants to weigh in on, we can't do that mid-meeting. We can't do that at the beginning of the agenda. Like, we want you to come to us and talk to us ahead of time to get it on the agenda, since we are a public policy council, and get it out to everybody. Yeah, actually,
Can I make a suggestion for something we have to college in this?
go for it.
At the very end, do we have a letter number for announcement? Eric and I were talking, and that could be a place where if you have something to bring up for the next meeting, you can, or it could just be like, hey, my community is doing this every show, or it could be announcements or. I don't know what we call it.
We'll call it-
It's a place where you can do announcements, or you could bring up agendas for the next.
We had member updates
Member updates, yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, okay, so adding back,
Yeah.
adding that back in, yes.
That's when we did it like at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I remember that.
Yeah.
Just move it to the very end.
Okay, great. Connie,
If we. Wait, years ago, we would have it printed, so you would send it to me ahead of time, and then I would send it as part of the agenda packet. So like, if you know if something's coming up, you're doing a panel, there's a really nice conference coming up, or you have updates from your working group, you would send it to me and I would send it as part of the agenda, but I know that doesn't always work. But yeah, I think like it's a great idea to add it to the end of the agenda, but like Tyler mentioned before, we tend to run until the last minute.
I'm looking to talk about this next month, in a meeting.
I think that's great, yeah. Okay. And then to get, I mean, that was like exactly what I brought up too, it's like, what's the level of it? We don't know yet. Let's get, yeah. Sure, us, co-chairs, yes, done. We will determine, hey, this is too big of a topic, the public needs,
Yeah.
wants to weigh in on this.
And there
Sure.
may, and maybe as we talk about it, maybe we can come up with at least, again, some guidelines for figuring out, okay, what things are going to stir up enough that they really require at least some public advance knowledge, like, I was trying to think, besides the Sky Energy Center, what sorts of things? And I think like the legislative priorities, like the things that set what we're going to be doing and what we're going to be continuing to put resources into. I think that's the sort of thing that like needs to be announced ahead of time. So maybe it's like, if we think this is gonna be something on our agenda or something that we're gonna be putting time into for more than one meeting, then probably maybe that's the loose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds like for now, that is going again to be a leadership decision, which is why having people coming in and out of leadership will help them. One, will help evaluate what gets on the agenda, and two, it means other people can have a say in like, actually, I don't think that's equitable for you to just be doing it that way all on your own in your quiet little Zoom meeting. You know, we're always up to nefarious things.
Okay, so then, I touched on this earlier, so we are transitioning to Teams from Zoom, so bear with us if you end up, being on that. We will hopefully keep figuring that out, but, as I mentioned, we're gonna keep hybrid meetings, for accessibility for everybody. We'll always have an in-person and we'll always have, as best as we can, a hybrid option, and I will be, monitoring the chat. Connie will not, so we'll tag team on that so that, we can, allow, and we'll allow for one person to talk at a time, and yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Are we having any discussion on that item now, or would you ask that we put on next month's agenda?
What would you like to talk about?
About the hybrid meeting? I don't feel like we've ever discussed it as a company.
I think that's not
But it's after the meeting.
We have, I mean, can we talk about that now? We have some time.
This is something that I feel pretty firmly about when we talk about equity and access. And one of the things that comes up is, obviously, like we talked about childcare and how do you get there? Or for me, a couple weeks ago would have been, can I physically get out of my county home?
Yeah.
And so I'm really reluctant to walk away from having hybrid be something we constantly offer for so many reasons. Is that something where you're like, no, I think having hybrid just won't do? What's on your mind?
Be consistently and as part of our partners' communication. I think having the option when things are unexpected, such as the weather you spoke of, I think that's great. I think when it's the standard practice that every time somebody always has an option, regardless of what their circumstances are, I think it undermines the energy that you spoke of before.
Yeah, so we talked about this, at our leadership retreat last month quite a bit, and, for accessibility for a variety of reasons. It's dinner time for people who have kids, and that could be a really hard barrier. It's also maybe bedtime for people who have kids, people who are like working late out on the farm, maybe, like they're like immediately like, and I'm inside right now. And, we talked quite a bit as much, we talked about this actually, maybe not our leadership retreat, maybe we talked about it at our leadership,
Combat.
at our agenda.
Yeah.
Study meeting. I think it's further discussion, but I think what we decided at least is that it's, we're gonna keep it hybrid for now. It's for the accessibility on all ends. And we'll keep seeing how it goes. I think, so me monitoring the chat is gonna be a way to hopefully help keep Connie to be able to be focused in person, and whether I'm in person or I'm on Zoom, we can help keep that flowing and help keep, everybody ability to, we're missing 6 people tonight. who knows what's going on in everybody's life. And we're having issues with our teams, but it would be great to have everybody here in person. Everybody has the option to be also on team. That's gonna be hard to say now, on team. Yes, it is hard to do that duel. And that'll definitely be a harder thing for co-chairs in the future who are maybe not as used to that. I coached somebody recently through a Zoom conversation who had never been on Zoom before. And I'm like, I'm on Zoom meetings constantly. I'm constantly doing the hybrid thing. Not everybody can and does and wants to. But and that maybe goes back to that co-chair overlap thing too, of like how's the best. And it's really just like the brain function going,
Yeah.
okay, here.
I agree. There is a compromise in having to split our attention that way. And I do think that we are looking and hoping to improve and be like, okay, each time someone needs to be on Zoom, is there something more we can do? So we've considered, like, again, we talked about childcare, other things.
Yeah.
Are there things we can do? Are there options we can offer? And I think that we'll be able to improve the attendance rate and hopefully continue to have people be able to be present. But I just think I think it's going to be a continuing option for now, in that also people can count on the fact that if they can't make it, they already know the link, they already know where to look, rather than having to text last minute and go, oh, shoot, I can't come in.
Yeah, I'm stuck, whatever, yeah.
But I,
Hold on, Quinn. Yeah.
I just want to say, to the point of childcare, something we can aspire to as a council is that Casey tenants, when they organize one of their working groups or sort of like teams, they have a childcare team. And so it's like a group of people that have volunteered to, like, they're tuned in, whether they're like listening in with Teams or Zoom or something with earbuds or something. They're also their purpose, the function for that meeting or gathering that they're caring for anyone who wasn't able to secure childcare. Bring their kids, knowing that their kids will be like looked after and played with by.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've talked about, and I've been talking about this for a long farmers market, trying to get more vendors to come to like our weekday market who couldn't come because of childcare. I think that's like definitely a systemic problem. I mean, clearly we're all needing more early childhood education and childcare, and big conversation in the country right now. And I think that's a great point. We talked about that. We have, grant money right now available for things like that, for childcare, whether that's in somebody's home, whether it's transportation costs and needs, or whether that's childcare here at a meeting. Doesn't mean somebody always is comfortable with that, can take that offer, and then that's something we still want to support that person to be able to come however they are and how they can. Tyler, I saw your hand and then the diet.
Because we are, because we do host these meetings to the public as well, we have to think about accessibility in that aspect as well. Not everyone has the means, maybe transportation issues, childcare reasons, they cannot or feel comfortable attending a meeting in person, so we do have to allow them to be able to engage with us through an equitable system.
otherwise, we're just putting barriers in the way. And then I think Colleen's next, actually.
It's a great way to also record things. I mean, it's really, actually put it that, it's really like you're starting to be like, oh, I'm on camera on the county website. Oh, but it is.
Screenshot was terrible.
But like, I go back and watch like city council and city commission and county commission meetings that are recorded, or I try and jump on Zoom for this job, or for my career. And it does increase another accessibility, even if I'm just like listening in while I'm cooking dinner or something, maybe that's somebody's interest in what they're wanting to do. Natalia?
I'm hearing people say that if we continue to have the hybrid meetings, that then that always an option for everyone. I want to remind us that it is not an option for everybody. Some of us cannot process that kind of digital, audio, visual Or me at all. Under any circumstance. I would rather, I would walk to him to get to the meeting. Instead of, because I would not be accessible.
Natalia, is there an option, so besides meeting in person like this, and then having digital for those who want or use that access, is there some other access that isn't being offered, or you just want to make sure that there is also the in-person, physical, analog this every time?
I'm trying to make the distinction that if I were someone that had, or if I was, or, you know, when I've been working on the farm all day, I still have to drive to the in-person. Zoom is not an option for me in a busy day, or bad weather, or if I had time, or what, I would have to not participate. But, yeah.
I hear you, and we'll always have it in person and,
Yeah.
make sure that that's available for sure.
But I'm wanting to address the equity issue that the language that we are tending to use around that is that everybody can do, you know, that's an option for everybody.
Okay.
It's an option for most people.
It's not for me, yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think then like, that's a really good point. Thank you for that language clarification.
And if we had members that did not use computers. Not be allowed.
Yeah, sure.
If we had members that did not have cell phone or internet, it would not be an option for that. So it's not the need, but the disability. But not everybody has that. And that's, I really speak out to that because that is a type of equity, angle of equity that is, we're just being left in the dust. There's too much that we can do. There's so many things that were shut out. I am shut out of so many professional development activities that are only online. And I don't want to do that. Yeah. We have to stand up for the space for people to not have cell phones, have computers, have internet service.
On a quick point, then we'll hit Dietrich, and actually then we'll need to move on. Like Quinlan pointed out for the childcare team, it's possible that maybe we need to develop a little network where like, hey, look, like Dietrich, you bike. And if the weather is poor, you may need to have a network of people like, hey, is there anyone available to come pick me up? Because I need to be in person, but I cannot transport myself. And so it just means, like Natalia, like you pointed out, each option isn't going to be accessible to everybody. So making sure that we have enough options for our membership at the very least is going to be important. So it may mean building a network of, hey, look, we're county folks.
Love that. Anybody on the east side who ever need a ride, please let me know. We'll always take you up. Oh, we're yeah, if you're coming from the north, Italians up north. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it first. I don't know if you can use that, or you don't have to use it.
It's helpful for the recording.
Cody spoke of enticing people to come in person. You guys see things that are going the other way. So it would be nice if the expectation, if I come to an in-person meeting, that the person leading that meeting would be in person. First. Secondly, if somebody's giving a presentation, that person would be in person. And then thirdly, if somebody is going to connect online, if they have a solid enough internet connection, they can stay online. But we're not asking them to repeat themselves or losing them, going back and forth and spinning the wheel in that regard.
I think the majority of those are going to be, again, leadership team building tools that either like encourage just better communication and making sure that like there's a certain standard met. So everything is clear, because obviously disruptions in communication or a presentation that feels not present in that sense. I think that would be leadership building tools again in that direction. I don't know if we can set a policy, be like, no, you have to do it this way, but I think building a culture, I think is the thing.
Okay, Ashley, last word, and then we're gonna move on.
I am someone who attends almost exclusively on Zoom. For the following reason, I live on the south side of the county. It is a solid 30-minute drive for me. So then when we get done, it's a 30-minute drive home. I have 3 young children, but they're school age, so I'm not gonna bring them to a meeting when we get home at 9 o'clock. I don't discount the idea for having childcare, because if you have very small kids, it doesn't matter when they go to bed, they sleep all day, that's different. Also, I have called before, like I remember, I think it's when Kim was still here, and I was like, what are we looking at? When most people RSVP for Zoom or in person, because I'm like, I don't want to attend a meeting in person, like 90% of them are. So that is how I think about it too. I'm like, well, most people are on Zoom, I'm gonna stay on Zoom. What if we did, and this should be an unofficial thing, like all the meetings, because I come to the retreats that are in person, like once you come in person. Like quarterly, saying we want as many people in person as possible. Like it's like assuming that there's still gonna be somebody who's a sick kid, who is sick, who can't get out of their driveway. But like there's an expectation that you attend 4 meetings in person. Same, at least, if not more so. I don't think anybody's talking about getting rid of in-person meetings.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna
Strongly encouraging.
wrap that up there, and I think leadership, we'll have a conversation about that. I think that's a really
There's
great.
something there.
There's something that we're gonna move on right now. Natalia, I see your hand, sorry, we're gonna move on. We have a budget request for review we have to do. And then keep moving on. We're already a little bit behind there. That was a great conversation. So we have been going over, as people have been doing, different professional developments and different events, we've been using our money awesomely, and we want to keep doing that. And we have been talking over what our budget request form looks like. And is this what you pulled up? Do you want to talk?
Yeah. This one is particularly for attending conferences or leadership opportunities for FPC board members and also working group participants. And it's really short. So you would just have to write your name, your email, title of the event, title of the conference, or any event that you like to attend that you need a funding assistance for, whether that is mileage, conference ticket, or travel stipend. The event dates, and something that's important to consider is that if this event benefits your personal work, that you first request funding from your employer. But I know that there is a percentage of folks that are here as their own. And there's also a percentage of folks that are here getting paid by their job. Acknowledging that. Event location. How does this event relate to your work with the Food Policy Council, or the work of the Food Policy Council? And then just kind of like a line item of this. This is actually an example that Emily shared with me for a conference that she's attending. That's about how much it's going to cost for her to attend, but her request is different. So that's the total, and then you will have the request number there. Put the number.
So
Let me check.
what did we decide last month, guys? It was not that.
It was set at 50%. Or up to.
That's not what
Let me look at my
we,
notes.
find my notes.
Okay, I'm gonna go back down just to finish reading the requirements, and then we can.
No, we're back.
Okay,
Okay, simple. Okay, share the link of the event, if there's any. And additional information. If there are equity considerations, and that includes, for example, that your job, this is not part of your job. Your job is not gonna pay 50% of this. You're low income, you have to take your kids, so it's gonna cost more, etc.
Yeah.
This is one of those, times we hit the policy versus.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, thank you.
We didn't have policy.
No, we didn't have policy. We sort of loosely for a while had 50% or up to $1,000. And so one of the other things we talked about when it came to budgeting is we also then, is this in here where we talk about? Okay. So one is it's $500 per person per year, encouraging also, like if somebody goes, hey, I already did one this year, then there's going to be sort of a gently encouraged opt in, opt out, like I got a conference, someone else's turn. Also, the suggestion means that if somebody does have the consideration of my job doesn't need this, or I'm self-employed, or if I'm self-employed and I don't have someone who's going to contribute, then suggested gives us a little room to help decrease the burden for whatever member.
Also, but if it's at the end of the year, and we have a lot of money in our budget, like it might make a difference how much we give, to use it or lose it kind of budget.
Right.
But now we have an actual form, so there's a little bit more, like.
Oh, I think that's
That's
that's something else, yeah. It-
Fill out that part.
It was a template that I got from forms, but it ends there. So it's just to encourage board members to continue to bring new information to the council.
Yeah, to encourage board members to bring new information to the council, and also working group members to encourage them also to bring back to. I think that's all I have, and unless anybody has any other suggestions that the form should have.
Okay, Tyler made a motion to approve. I saw Ashley's hand first, seconded, featured. Ashley. Marquis. Me. Quinn. Natalia. Enrique.
Aye.
Tyler. Cody.
Aye.
And this is Emily, aye. Okay, so let us look it over when you guys fill it out. Like I filled it out, it's pretty simple. And also like to Lee, Quinn, and Enrique, you're still pretty new. Like, if you want to go to a professional development thing, something seems cool, it pops up. Reach out if you're not sure if it's right. Otherwise, if you're like, hey, I want to do something and I don't know what's out there, there's a lot of really great things out there we can help suggest you to do that as well. And with that, I'm going to hand over the floor to Tyler to talk about the mobile food vendor policy. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, so, as many of you know, but we have in the room, I have been working on this, program for the last year, I think it was a year as of March, on reviewing mobile food vending, permitting and policies in Douglas County. We are going to be speaking with the city staff tomorrow and commissioners, a couple commissioners on Wednesday. So I'm kind of giving a guinea pig presentation to you all. I've given it before. This will be my second time. Very exciting. Okay, next. And we have some pictures of our food truck focus group participants here. And I apologize, this is too small. Yeah.
Is that better?
Okay, so again, we identified the challenges, regulations, permitting and fees and other requirements for food trucks to operate in Lawrence and Douglas County can be restrictive, unclear, sometimes costly. This reduces opportunities for some food service entrepreneurs, especially those systematically disadvantaged, to enter the industry. Our purpose then is to re-examine the permitting processes, fees, and requirements for food trucks in Lawrence, Douglas County, with our goal of creating equitable and fair regulations, providing sufficient resources and other efficient systems and processes for food truck owners to operate in Lawrence and Douglas County. So this was our projected timeline. We did alter it just slightly as we had to wait a little bit longer for some of our research analysis to come back. But we are now on the Q1 2024, so we're presenting this, our findings to key stakeholders. We have a final report. It's about 60 pages long, with half of it being content, the other half of it being kind of addendums, our research findings, data, and other sources. And depending on how our meetings go with the city and with commissioners, we potentially will present this report to governing bodies like the City of Lawrence commissioners to consider these policy recommendations that I'll talk about here in a few minutes. So we did an extensive amount of research, both locally and nationwide. One of the biggest barriers that we had seen in the past regarding mobile food vendors in Lawrence was there was a strong position from the Restaurant Association that it was going to be that food trucks were going to be in competition with brick and mortar restaurants. There has been a lot of research since then, including a resource that came out late last year, or late in 2022 rather, that shows that this is actually incorrect and they actually can complement brick and mortar restaurants. And so we were really trying to kind of dispel this narrative that had been happening across the country. What ended up happening was that fear was creating policies that were creating the restrictions that we're now trying to reverse. One of the things we wanted to make sure we were doing was aligning with all the different strategic plans throughout the city and county. And so we looked at our food system plan, Plan 2040, which is the county's comprehensive plan, the Douglas County Community Health Plan's anti-poverty plan, Lawrence strategic plan, the Lawrence economic development strategy recommendations, and Lawrence's downtown master plan. We're also looking at this through this kind of reverse way of looking at policy creation, where traditionally you see policies enacted that then affect relationships that then create narratives. What we wanted to do is reverse, is listen to those stakeholders, listen to the mobile food truck vendors to hear what are the challenges they're seeing, what are the barriers they're seeing, be able to then go up and create policies that really are driven by those narratives. We created a stakeholder map, which kind of gave us a roadmap of all the different groups that we wanted to talk to over the year. And I will say we met with almost a lot of these, good 70%, 80% of them. We did extensive community engagement. Last fall, we attended these 5 events listed, and as well as had meetings again with city staff, had phone calls, phone interviews, emails. We had about a 45-day like boots on the ground community engagement, but we also engaged again for the last 12 months with groups, and now we're finally being able to report back. And as part of that community engagement, we partnered with the University of Kansas, Dr. Susan Harvey, with the Health Sport Exercise Sciences Division, who has been a huge food system proponent and has offered us free research in the past. She created extensive surveys for community in general, for restaurants, and for producers. We also had a guide created for us to help navigate the food truck focus groups that I'll talk about in a bit. But overall, we received back 112 community surveys, 22 restaurant surveys, and 51 producer surveys. Thank you, Emily, for sending out all your producers. These are some of the results that occurred for this, so you probably can't read some of these.
Trying to like make it bigger. It's hard.
Okay, so like, I believe the presence of food trucks would provide diversity in the type of offerings that could be made available in Lawrence and Douglas County, or to Lawrence, Douglas County community members. You'll see in all these categories, the somewhat agree, strongly agree, or strongly agree, or strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, are often here. So we're seeing the results, and I'll send this out to everyone so they can see it. But we basically had community support for all the things we were looking at. We were not seeing any indication that people were concerned that food trucks would be in direct competition, negatively impacting brick and mortar restaurants. Can you scroll just slightly? And these were distributed at the events that we attended, also through email lists provided from some of our groups.
Did you send out?
What was that?
This is the one you sent out an email to us to distribute to.
Yeah. So we also hosted 3 food truck focus groups. 2 of them were in person, 1 was virtual. That was so that we could maximize the amount of attendees. They often had very challenging schedules, and so we were happy to have the ones attend that did. And so some of the feedback we heard from these was the process itself of getting permitted and licensed was a very convoluted process. What permits, inspections were even required? What was like the chronological order? We found one person that was actually had been over permitted and spent like $1,400 in permits that they didn't even need, which for food truck owners and operators, like every dollar counts. And so we wanted to try to, again, try to make this process a little bit more smooth and easy to navigate rather than create burdens and restrictions that just cost them money and time. So through all of this data collection and the focus groups, we came up with policy recommendations just for the city of Lawrence, Kansas. We did not look at we did not consider policy recommendations for other cities such as Baldwin, Eudora, and Lecompton, as well as the county as a whole, partially because those mobile operators in those areas didn't feel like there were really any challenges or barriers as far as like times they can operate, where they can operate. It was pretty loose. Lawrence has had the most restrictive and most costly permitting and fees. So we really are just kind of focusing on policy recommendations for Lawrence. Oops, go back. So I want to go through the actual. So we're going to recommend 1, that the commission consider a prorated amount for the vendor's license in Lawrence, which is currently $300. The reason for that was depending on the time of year that you would start the application process, you could potentially like double up quickly. So let's say you get your permit in December and you pay $300. And then the year starts again in January, you pay another $300. So we're looking at that as a possibility. That one I know is a bit of a sticking point with the city, and we'll learn more about this tomorrow, but they generally said if you do prorated amount, you're basically going to front load a higher fee at the beginning of the year and a lower fee at the end of the year, so that you still stay at around an average of $300. So we'll see what the city says. Another one is that the mobile food vendors currently are only able to operate 3 hours of a day per location, which just doesn't make sense. Everyone we talked to has said they have no idea why that language was included in the ordinance, and it has been in there through 2 revisions of it. So the consensus is we just remove that because the market kind of handles itself. The vendors will operate on a schedule that works for them, whether that's 1 service per day, or if they want to do multiple, such as like breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner, or after bar, like bar hours, that they can self-regulate that. They don't need to be told how many hours a day they can operate. And then the biggest sticking point was this section G of the code that triggers a site plan review by city staff. And an example of this was Streamline Coffee wanted to affix their food truck to a former gas station site there on 19th and Mass. That semi-permanent or permanent triggered the site plan requirement, which in turn had to go through months and months of review. And had the owners not been architects and had knowledge of like how to navigate this process themselves and could do it on company hours, she said that she would be upwards of like $20,000 just for that site planning process, hiring, you know, a professional to do all the plans and drawings for it and going through those motions. Fortunately for them, the deal kind of fell through at that site. And so they did not have to navigate that, but that would have been a huge financial barrier for them. And this was actually a recommendation from one of the city staff that it's kind of time and labor intensive for them as well, where there's much larger projects that need to be reviewed on the city's schedule. So we'll see again what they think of that. Additional recommendations, these are more like kind of procedural. We want to have the fire inspection, which is required in the city of Lawrence, to be like an actual checkbox item on the application, because it's not. And we found out in our focus groups that some people were unaware that they had to have a fire inspection. Lawrence does it for free. They're a part of a network of fire departments across Lawrence, Topeka, KC Metro, where if they get an inspection, have this sticker in their vehicle, they can operate in any of those participating communities as well and not have to be inspected for each. The city of Eudora, for instance, they are not part of that group yet, but they will see that if someone has that fire inspection and they're basically like, great, we don't have to inspect you too. We trust that this was a thorough inspection. And then we're asking that all departments that are involved in this process, clerk's office, planning and development, parks and rec, fire prevention, continue to find ways to streamline the process through their internal procedures. Next steps for the council, we want to look at creating a resource guide for mobile food vendors interested in having a food, or those interested in having a food truck on their premises. This would be similar to like what the urban ag guide that was created by the council several years ago would look like. It'd be an online and probably printed resource. So we're in the initial steps of talking about that. We want to continue to host events like we did our resource fair and panel last week that will focus on food business entrepreneurs. We want to continue to leverage relationships with community partners to connect these food truck entrepreneurs. For instance, we're thinking about having conversations with the Lawrence Restaurant Association, potentially, you know, incorporating food truck owners into their organization, like they would be able to have some sort of resources and mentoring or be able to throw ideas off each other, or like other communities that have their own self-organized food truck groups, such as Manhattan has one, Topeka has one, KC Metro has one as well. We're planning on monitoring the number of mobile food vendor permits issued in Douglas County annually over the next 5 years. The city of Lawrence does, and I believe either Baldwin or Eudora does as well. And then we want to monitor the number of active restaurants in Douglas County, again, to confirm that brick and mortar restaurants are not negatively impacted if food truck permits issued go up. And that information would come from the KDA. Any questions?
You said you're presenting to the county on Wednesday?
Sorry, we're from, presenting to city staff members
Okay,
tomorrow,
Okay.
and then to city commissioners
Okay.
who were involved in the process early on.
cool.
To kind of,
Thanks. I was like, this is all city policy, so that was my clarity. Thank you.
and one thing I'll add
Maybe
is
just like-
we asked some local organizations for letters of support, and as of date, we have received letters of support from the Lawrence Restaurant Association, from KU Small Business Development Center, from Network Kansas. We have a commitment from Douglas County Core, and It's the last one. Oh, the chamber of this, for the city of Lawrence is considering as well. So having those letters of support really kind of back up the work that we're doing. Each,
Yeah, could you go back to your point about we're gonna present to commissioners that have been working with you.
so last summer, fall, I reached out to Commissioners Larson and Littlejohn to share that we were doing this work, kind of what our community engagement strategy was, to get their input on what they would like to see out of this as well. And so they have given their kind of their feedback that kind of drove at least a couple of quarters worth of our work. And so we felt it would be opportune if this was going to go back in front of them potentially, that we wanted to revisit, have them be able to look at the final draft, make any input that they have before going to the actual array of commissioners. So
What would that be the next step if you're getting good plans from the staff and from Lisa Larson and Virgo down? Would it need to go to the city commission next, or is there some commission in between?
that's what we're gonna find out too, because there can be, depending on like which ones they want to move forward on, it could be something done, I think, outside of an actual city commission meeting. Some could be done in work session. And so really it's gonna be dependent on, yeah, staff letting us know what our next step is. My goal, like, I think almost all 5 commissioners know we're working on this and are supportive, so it's just making sure everyone's aware we're getting ready to put this in front of them.
It's not a surprise.
Yeah, it's honestly, we don't want to surprise them.
This is so cool.
Nice work.
Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, I'm down with that.
Good job, Tyler.
All of the
He was
action.
so great. I'm so impressed. Okay, did you?
Firefighter.
Just for running.
Really advise the elected officials when counties open and fly.
Yeah, and partnerships for plans, especially bringing it back to the Lawrence Farmers Market and their permanent location. I think like there's a lot of advocacy that started that conversation, that began at the market and then came to the Food Policy Council and then back to the market. And now it's coming back to the Food Policy Council to continue to make those recommendations. Yeah, okay, and I can, your turn. I wanted to get water and. Okay, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay.
Do we have any?
Yes, we do. Could you review and then I can put like a QR code?
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you were able to see my video I made that I got sent out. If not, I can just do a quick recap of our community health plan that we've been working on. So for the past couple of months, we've held holding some stakeholder meetings with some community partners in Douglas County. And so we've been meeting pretty monthly, identifying I guess, food insecurity in our community, how we can develop strategies to kind of overcome and solve this issue that's in our community. Obviously, there's no one size fits all answer for food insecurity. There's plenty of issues and barriers that people face for food security. And so on my video, I kind of talked about, we made priority areas to what we believed in. I think there's a slip or a page that kind of also goes over the slides. Other priority areas that we came up with. What we were asking for the Food Policy Council is really just to help identify or rank these priority areas in which you guys think is most important for us to develop more strategies for as we continue to think of new ideas on how to overcome and reduce food insecurity in our community. right now, I think we're gonna pull up a link that will let you guys vote on your phone. If not, we can also, if you want to write on the paper.
Let's go to. Yes.
So here are the priority areas. Under each one is the top issues or top kind of challenges with the priority areas. Just to get you a better understanding of what each one means, because I know they're pretty broad and they can mean a lot of things. But it's just to help you guys understand and rank what you guys believe could make either the biggest impact or is what is most important to you and to making change in terms of food security. Yeah.
I have a question about the food system at the bottom.
No.
Where do you think there's a lack of grocery stores?
Um,
Or where did that come up?
Mainly in areas like food deserts and like North Lawrence, rural areas, Eudora, Lecompton, were one of the main areas in terms of lack of grocery stores.
There is a food desert map,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you hesitated or got hung up on it?
Part of it's because I'm not from Douglas County. So like, I'm from a county where there was like 2 grocery stores in the county, and I didn't think about there being a lack of grocery stores. There's so many grocery stores in Lawrence. It's like, I feel like I understand the definition of food desert, and I have a hard time wrapping my mind around it when there's so many grocery stores in Lawrence. So that's my understanding of it doesn't coincide with the definition at all. So that's why I was just like, I didn't know if there's a specific area of the county you were looking to for that. Because I'm like, even Baldwin has a grocery store. I live, I'm in the rural part of the county. So I was like, if anything, like, I would be part of that, but I don't feel like I don't have a grocery store. But I also have transportation to get to it, so.
Yeah, so, is there another question?
Yeah, they're just. There's villains like right there.
Not right there, if you have a toddler or a 4-year-old, you need.
Downtown.
I did have a.
Also, Enrique, is this conversation, do you have room for this, or do you want to vote first and then do it?
Yeah, we can vote first and
Okay,
then.
cool. Cool.
Okay.
Didn't want to make sure we get done. with
So
this.
you should just have gotten an email if you want to use your phones with the link to vote and rank. If you would prefer to use a paper and pencil, you can use the paper form that with this page that is attached to your agenda. And then you can just rank with numbers, 1 being your preferred, and then down to your least preferred. Let me know if you need a pen. You didn't?
Is there anyone opposed to using their paper? Otherwise, we can just do the paper and.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
We can do the paper.
Does everybody have a pen or pencil? Okay, Tyler needs one and I need one. Here.
So to clarify, Enrique, this is to guide basically your work through the trip.
Correct.
It's not,
Okay, you should have gotten one now, sorry.
this isn't necessarily the food policy council determining what they are going to work on.
Yes, it's to advise what the Douglas County health plan is going to prioritize. And the Food Policy Council is a partner of that plan. So in a sense, the Food Policy Council will also continue that work. And this is just one group vote. We have a group of community stakeholders from across the county who do food insecurity work or food security work that have already done this vote. And we're just going to combine them and look at the data together.
You've got, do you see a sheet that has. the right categories on it? So essentially rank them. And so that way we're just giving input to what we as the Food Policy Council would like them to consider. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's 1 through 5. Yeah, 1 being your highest, 5 being the least.
Actually, while we vote, one thing, sorry.
Called out.
But, no, one of the things that comes up, food desert can be confusing. And so there are people in equity work who insist on calling it food apartheid. And so
Oh,
the-
yeah, so
the idea being
starts here.
that you're right, like if, depending on how you look at it and what your resources are, there is Dylan Frank.
Okay, and then
But like,
we'll talk.
let's say
Okay.
let's say it's not Dylan's, or there's a certain market and it closes at 5, you work till 6. Do you buy those groceries? Can you keep them at work? Like, then you start looking into the ways where there is food, but can you get it home?
See, and that's why I was like, to me, like, when you talk, like, I'm getting way on topic, probably, but when you talk about like what you're saying, like, do we need to build more grocery stores? Well, no, because they're not gonna be able to support themselves if there's that many, like, they're gonna close because they're in business. So really, like, instead of a lack of grocery stores, it's a lack of transportation to get to them.
And that's part of the priority.
Because to me, like, that
makes.
Yeah, you I did.
Cool. Well, yeah, you're right. Like,
No, because I also looked at like the lack of food supply and less food being done, which is part of it. and that's-
right. But you are right that food desert can
It's
affect
just
how
really
you
hard
approach
for
the
me to
problem.
wrap my mind around based on so many grocery stores here.
A food desert for rural versus urban areas. And so, Lawrence has a different definition of food desert. That's the community.
Well, I don't get that. It's just, I have a hard time grasping. it. Like, how do you say that to food?
Yeah, you don't want to.
What?
Yeah, suffering goes out, and you that one down.
Yeah, but like, I think the lack of food supply and like less food being donated to pantries. There's grocery stores, there's lack of.
Rick, is there anything else that you specifically need from us?
I don't believe so.
No, but if folks are interested in joining this working group, let Enrique or I know, and we can invite you to those community gatherings that will continue the discussion on the Douglas County Health Plan.
Beyond work.
Yes.
As far as I know, the only real barrier is, again, if the working group meets quorum. So if there's so many members, like if members are like, wait, I do want to be involved in water and food waste, for instance. Right, less than 8 members. But if you got time.
Yeah, and we can send you the dates.
Yeah, if you're interested in attending a stakeholder meeting, the next one's next Tuesday, I think on the 20th at 1:30. So if you're really passionate about this, you're more than welcome to join us. It's a, sorry, what was it? 27th. Tomorrow's the 20th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 27th, sorry, at 1:30. You're more than, it's an open invitation, so if you're able to attend, you're more than welcome to. I obviously will continue to come here and report to you guys as well, so up to you guys, you're more than welcome to join us.
Thanks, Enrique.
Thank you, Enrique.
Great work.
Okay, I think we're next item. Okay, back to the agenda. Yeah, okay. Okay. Just some updates. If you did not see the picture on social media, we got the big check from Blue Cross Blue Shield for the Pathways grant. Yes, 10K for the Food Policy Council. Oh, because I had to go. To use as a continuation of the lived experience stipend. So like Cody mentioned before, the council first applied to the Kansas Food Action Network to get a mini grant to start a pilot program to provide stipends for underserved board members. As I mentioned before, some of us here are getting paid by our day jobs to attend hourly, and some are not, and others have other barriers that just makes it even harder to attend.
So those stipends go to those folks, including working group members. And after that, we, Douglas County, as part of a multi-board and multi-staff initiative, passed the lived experience policy. So now Douglas County, as a governing body with boards, provides a lived experience stipend. So this is the first trial year on how it goes. And it just happened that we had applied for this grant a long time ago, so we are kind of like doubling up on funds right now. So I guess that's good. But one nuance of this particular fund is that we are trying to spend it largely on city because the lived experience stipend passed by Douglas County government can only be used for Douglas County OM appointed members. And there's kind of like a blurry line for working group, but it's only for those kind of appointed members. So we also want to make sure that the city of Lawrence appointed members have the same opportunity. Yes. So yeah.
Have not figured out how to access that at all, or which meetings are approved, what's eligible, what's not, with my time.
Yeah, we can.
Was approved in October, and I not been able to navigate any good experience.
Okay, yeah.
My understanding is that there's not even a way to get stuff from before the beginning of the year.
It's a bit
really confusing.
It is confusing, yes.
It's not fair if it's not acceptable. Even if the county says we're doing this, if they're making it inaccessible, it doesn't exist.
Thank you for expressing that. And yes, it is genuinely difficult to access the funds because the way that you have to do it is that, for example, if one of you signed the agreement that you are a participating lived experience board member, I have to sign off every time you complete a meeting, whether it's a working group meeting or a full council meeting. I have to sign off a paper and send it to administration that you attended, and therefore you get a $50 stipend for each meeting with a cap. And then, yes. Yes. So it is complex. So the way that you obtain the funds is that you do have to go to the old courthouse, go up the stairs to administration and request for your funding. And it's a hassle for sure. Yeah, and the reason why it's because we're trying to keep it under, I believe it's $500, because then you would become an employee. And they probably think twice a month to check. Yeah, and there's a rule also that I who signed the paper, the bureaucracy. I who signed the paper that you attended this meeting cannot give you the funds. So a second staff person has to give, for example, it would be Jamie or Kim or another person, but for this, it's going to be administration at the courthouse who has a box, literally a box with the funds that you will pick up. So it's the inequities of being a government board. And
because it is taking away from my time.
That's right.
Natalia, you're not the only one to run into this problem. I'm running into this problem with at least one of our,
Working group member?
not the working group members, but actually one of the participants in our ethnographic study. So actually, this is something, Connie, maybe you and I can set up a meeting, or maybe leadership can set up a meeting. Anyway, I'd like to lean on, the county a little, in this
I
regard.
think that would be very, very appropriate because they have designed something for a purpose, designed it in a way that countermands that.
Right.
Would
This
you
is,
be okay with getting it like a month late, like it kind of signs it, and then the next meeting, it's waiting for you, somebody else wrote it out? Will she have to go to the county office?
She has to pick it up, so I cannot touch the money.
but it has to be staffed.
Can we mail it? Like, I think that's the only one. Because like I get mailed from like.
I think that they're trying to track the money, so you have to go there, sign, get cash. But
So this is one of those things where I think, again, because I think someone like leadership, and so this is another one of those things where being in leadership is important, because now I can, as a county, as a food policy council member and vice chair, I can go to the county and go, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And ideally, because Connie has the position of also being staff and being stuck in the rules of staff. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity for what leadership can do that's sort of like, what is the word? Is this soft power? I think it's soft power. So anyway, the other thing also is just getting the script from Connie so that we have an understanding as council members, like what do people actually have to do? Because because I have to tell people, how are you going to get paid if you participate in our research that we're going to do? So this is one of those things where at the very least, leadership also needs you all to understand how people are going to get paid if they're going to participate. So, Connie, I understand that because you're a staff member, there's only so much you can do. So I'd like to be in the room with you and help sort of figure out what's going on. Because I'd like it to be easier for Natalia.
Well, how they're keeping underserved community members underserved.
Yeah. This is, what is the word we use for the architecture that is meant to discourage homelessness? This is hostile architecture. Okay, so this is something I'm putting this on my priority list specifically to help Connie try and cut some of this away, or at least have a really clear script and make it easier to see what we can do about it.
thank you.
Yeah. And Natalia will hear you. You are absolutely right. It's, no, it shouldn't be a job to get paid for your job.
Yeah. And that was a really good point, was I need to be paid a stipend to get the stipend.
Okay.
Moving on.
Okay, March 7th is Kansas Food Action Network Advocacy Day at the Capitol. So Kansas Food Action Network meets on Zoom, convenes all the food councils. There are over 30 food policy councils in Kansas. Fun fact, we have the most food policy councils per Capitol. Kansas does in all of the US. And once a year, they go to Capitol to advocate for their policy priorities, which we as a council create in usually October. And advocate for what we pass. So this year, Cody and I will be attending, unless somebody else signed up. Yes?
So, JFAN has their own. They or may not be exactly the same as this.
Yeah, and this
I mean,
year,
they're similar.
they're very similar.
Are you guys going to advocate for JFAN or Douglas County?
Douglas County. But we're all going together as like, we're a ton of councils. Mhm. Just to check, it's just Cody and I, right? Nobody else signed up.
It's awesome.
We're fine. KPEN did extend the deadline?
Last Friday.
Okay, last Friday. Okay, cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, no,
something to keep in mind in the future is that November, the first week of November is when the Douglas County legislative priorities are due, the draft is due. So we, leadership decided that instead of rushing in October to figure out what your priorities are, have a running list through the year and then voting in October to provide the Douglas County priorities to Douglas County government.
I think another way of looking at this is also turning to your working groups. Because again, remember the food system plan is also going to be updated. So in some ways, this is a way of looking at, okay, what are our priorities and what does that look like in policy? So the next time you're in your working groups, if you have time, you might be able to go, okay, what one or two things do we think need to be on the legislative priority list? And then if you bring that to the council, we can have an ongoing list and start ranking them or start compiling them into maybe there are patterns, general patterns of what things. But yeah, we really don't want to get down to the wire and not have time to adequately consider it.
You might consider first having a vote for like September or October, because I know there's been times where we haven't met quorum in a month where we really need to get voted on. So we might say September, October will get.
Right. I think also making a goal of doing it, being ready to vote in September will be good, because that's under action month. And usually we're all really busy. Or at least there's a lot of things going on. So being ready for that sounds good.
Okay, leadership opportunities coming up. You can look this up on your own, but so here are some that go along with the food system plan. The Urban Food System Symposium is coming up June. You can look at the website and see if it's with your schedule, and if you like to attend, fill out the form that I will send to everyone after the meeting. There's also the Refed Food Waste Solution Summit, also the same week. And the KLC, Kansas Leadership Center training, that is free for all food policy council members and working group members. You can learn more about that work through the website. And the trainings are either online in Kansas City or Wichita. So if you decide to go in person, we can reimburse you your mileage if you're driving, but highly suggest you like double up if there's several people going to travel together. Okay. And keeping in mind that in the fall, so October and November are really big tabling events. And it's actually really nice because the rest of the time is really cold or really hot. So that's a really good time to table. We do a lot of farmers markets, the Kaw Valley Farm Tour. And I'm gonna see if we can do something in the Compton.
Okay.
I'd like to point out the Baldwin is the third Friday market and the last one is in September.
Oh.
Because October is Maple Leaf.
That's right.
And that one is just vendors.
And I wouldn't bother tabling in Maple Leaf because it's mostly people from town as opposed to Douglas County residents.
You could try, but they said that it's only for people that are selling, right? It's not like information.
Right. And then on top of, because it's we also have it sometimes with the Kaw Valley Farm Tour in that.
That's the person.
Well, the other thing is that because the Kaw Valley Farm Tour brings people from outside the county, but
There's like 20,000 people that come in.
Look.
And they're not from Douglas County.
It's so fun. Okay, I'm gonna pass it on.
Okay.
All right, so, thank you to our working groups who submitted what we've been what you guys have all been working on. And then also we have our 2024 goals. So I'm gonna go over the updates and then maybe hand it off to Cody. So with food and, hold on, making sure. Okay, great. With food and farm, oh, I see, hold on. I'm gonna do food and farm and Eco Devo, then I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Food and farms goal updates were, I'm a part of this working group, so I'm gonna say we we worked on water rights. We had a Lawrence citizen come to us and ask us about something about helping them with some policy piece. We gathered a bunch of data and we found out that the ask was actually different than how we interpreted it. So we ended up sending a letter to the Lawrence City Commission, which was what they actually requested. Right to repair was one of our goals, and we ended up sending a letter to Kansas Legislature from the Food Policy Council. Culinary Commons, which is our county's commercial kitchen. We toured it, we started gathering data, and we promoted that. Oh yeah, we started gathering data, and that ended up getting us to the idea for doing our food business panel that we ended up doing last week, and I'll go over that in a minute. We're still working on gathering data and promoting out different commercial kitchen opportunities. Cottage food laws was another goal, and this was supposed to be a collaboration with Equity and Forward to see what they wanted from us, and we ended up pushing that back. Our 2024 goals are we're gonna work help Florence Farmers Market permanent location project. It aligns with Food System Plan Goal 1, Objective 3, which also has been like a long-term policy thing that the Food Policy Council's been working on. And we're not sure exactly the ways that we're gonna support that yet. We just have that conversation Wednesday. And then
We can just add farmers market stuff in general.
yeah,
Based on the.
the one between you and me. Oh.
Oh, I didn't know if you need a food policy. Council.
Right, yeah, all right, we'll talk. Farmers market help and work, yes. We had this amazing food business startup panel discussion and resource fair last week in conjunction with Economic Development Working Group. And our goal is to have another one next year and maybe a little bit earlier, so plan it for January. And so we'll have our plan in place by the end of this year. It ran really smoothly in the end and went really great. It was very well attended. And then continue to work on commercial kitchen space and promote them to community members. Economic development, then global food vendor regulations. Tyler just gave a presentation and that was phenomenal. See what Tyler's been doing and what he had gone doing. We've had stuff going.
Okay, I want to be a little aware of time, and I also want to recognize, I want to give a little time to Natalia to tell us what water's up to and what is coming up, because Natalia already said that something important is coming up, and Dietrich has something he wants to add to the agenda for next time, so I want to make sure we get to those things. All right, so Forward is up to a couple new things. We have some new working group members. We also have Robert Hickerson, who is doing the pickups at the Cottons Market for bucket swaps for compost, 3-gallon buckets, I think, no, 5, he's all the way up to 5. Yeah. And it is going very, very well. And so that is a good thing. There are a couple of things also that Forward's up to besides the addition of Robert Hickerson, what he's up to with Tableview Farms. So we're also working our way through the lived experience. We're doing ethnographic research with members of the county. The idea, Dietrich helped identify some participants from Sunrise Community Center. Right, no, I've got Sunrise Cafe. I switched because I almost always want to say sunflower, but no, that's not what it is anymore. Sunrise Cafe. So what we're doing is we are encouraging to go, we're trying to go into their homes and their kitchens and sort of ask questions about how do you manage food? When do you throw things out? How do you make these evaluations? How do you keep food? How do you decide when it's time? Like how do you expiration dates? What do you know about them? That sort of thing. And we've got one in the bag and we're trying to get the next scheduled and ready to go. Also, it's also pointing out that Robert Hickerson is also looking for more organic material. He is trying to find for his vermicomposting operation. He needs more organic material because he's still purchasing. He's hoping to stop buying compost so he can be producing all this compost. So there's room for him to scale up. His big barrier is he needs about a $60,000 piece of equipment for operating windrows. So that's what he needs. So if anyone gets clever about that, let us know. Dietrich, is there any information you want to provide for the ongoing study?
Yeah, ongoing studies at a high school.
Okay.
Restaurant. And we are still advocating for an annual survey of.
Thank you. That's what I'm for. Okay, and then we also, there's the Indigenous Food System Plan. So that is going to, when's the launch for that, Connie? Can you remind me when we want to have it done?
It's like just started
Right.
so it's a pre-planning. We're getting really planning. So this first quarter, the goal is to meet and figure out, what are the Indigenous, food entrepreneurs. And that, I think the group is going to use some of the community stipends from the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant to do that work, and ideally have a convening to talk to community members in partnership with Mackie at Haskell School of Business and our food system intern to host community gatherings to talk to folks and figure out like what does the Lawrence Indigenous food system look like. But these outreach events will only be for like the pre-planning. I'm hoping to apply for grants to also hire experts. Maybe we already have experts in the council or in the community that we can hire to develop this plan. So it's a pre.
And also, of course, ideally that the development and work from this plan will just lead us right into the update for the food system plan. We can integrate those things. Then there's the Douglas County Health Plan and food security. We have discussed that. Is there anything missing that we need to include in the update? Excellent. Natalia, do you think you have maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and give us an update, what it is you're concerned about and what can be helpful?
There are several site plans, conditional use permit, and I just became aware of an annexation request that all kind of circle around the problem of rural residents that do not have access to city water or a public rural water system. They're dependent only on wells. And currently, the review process for site plans and CUPs and rezonings and all of that looks a lot at groundwater at stormwater management, but does not specifically require addressing effects on the groundwater, potential wells affected, etc. One of the situations that's come up is a family that's being forced to, from what I know, is being forced to annex into the city because their well failed. They are in a position to do that, but there are 26 other properties, residences in that neighborhood, and one of them that could be forced to annex. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, for a lot of those, if somebody on the further edge of that area wants to hook onto the city, then everybody else would be forced to hook on. But everybody would be forced to pay for it out of pocket. And meanwhile, the county is piecemeal approving industrial site plans that could threaten the groundwater, threaten to contaminate the groundwater. So I feel like it's really important that I would like to see a moratorium on all of these approval processes that are ignoring the potential impact on what in this neighborhood, many of these are low to moderate income people, retired people, renters with children, people that cannot afford for that kind of expense. I was forced to annex part of my property 25 years ago. And it cost $15,000 to get water and sewer access for a house that was less than 100 feet, less than 50 feet from the city services. Some of these homes are a quarter of a mile from city services. And industry is benefiting from being allowed to get these permits and approvals and stuff without consideration and without having a plan in place for families to have water.
Are you only concerned about the industrial contamination of groundwater? Or the industrial potential draw from the existing table? That would.
There are so many.
I'm just curious.
That's a very good point, but it was not really on my radar in this situation. And so now I added that to the list. That's why I want people to help me with this, because we don't have a lot of time.
So the first one is, do you have a specific action item that you need help with immediately?
Yes, and it's so fresh that today was a holiday and I couldn't get information from the city that I needed.
Okay. Then go ahead, we'll share it with me and share it with leadership and we'll forward it to everybody so everybody has an idea of what's going on. And so it also sounds like, so the biggest consequence at the moment is without the moratorium, there will be more industrial development that threatens the groundwater. Once the groundwater is compromised, then everyone's forced to act.
Right.
Okay. So it sounds like let's keep an eye on this.
And everyone's supposed to pay for annexation.
Right.
Which it could force people to sell them.
And then probably.
And then it also depletes our stock of affordable housing because suddenly your house, my house would probably be $60,000 because we would have to have a sewer lift station.
We looked at moving water across the road where we already are, and we were gonna build $30,000 to set a meter across the road. And move it under the road and that's it. It's expensive, rough out.
Yeah. Excellent.
And it would be water and sewer.
Okay. Okay, so again, please everyone keep an eye out when Natalia will send us what we need, what help Natalia needs, and we'll try and get in front of everybody's eyes. Okay, so we're hitting up close to time. I want to go through this last point for food system specialists, and then we've touched a little bit on our legislative priorities. So I just want you to remember to keep those in mind in your working groups. And that also leads into the food system plan. So I want a little bit of update on the food system specialists, and then a quick check in with Dietrich about what agenda item you would like to
This point is in short is to get your blessing for me to talk to leadership, so all the chairs. If there's an opportunity of grant funding that would support, for example, the expansion of commercial kitchens or the study that would support your work, or that you have already mentioned on the agenda. So everybody knows that what Forward is working on in a sense, and everybody knows what most groups are working on, that that you allow me to work directly with leadership if a grant opportunity comes. And if it does become like contentious, we will be in communication with leadership if it's an item that needs to go to the agenda and be approved for vote before applying. But in general, like for example, I'm hoping to apply for funding for the Indigenous Food System Study, which we've already talked about, and also apply for funding to better engage our rural communities, so it's, Lecompton, Medora and Baldwin and everything in between.
Could have missed this in a previous meeting. We, as a food policy council, assessed what we were prioritizing the funding for. Who decides? We, as a council, staff decide
What grant?
what grants we go at, what topics we are trying to fund with grants.
I think it's just as the topics come with your working group, or if it's a joint food policy council, like, effort.
My understanding of what you're asking is simply to be empowered that once you see an opportunity, that you essentially say, hey, this is here, can I pursue it? Is that correct? Meaning that if Connie sees a grant opportunity, she would turn to the working group or to a council member and say, would you like me to pursue this? So in some ways, so I think it seems to be a collaborative approval, not a, there's already a set priority list of funding. It's more of simply empowering our staff member to say, I've got time, here's an opportunity, should I chase it? Does that make better sense?
Kind of doing that with understanding of what the working group. Yeah,
And it would be in collaboration with the chairs.
Right.
right?
Not require a vote.
Yeah, so I was gonna make a motion. I make a motion that we give Connie, our current food system specialist, the ability to apply for funding and grants to support the work of the commitments of the Douglas County Food Policy Council and its working group in collaboration with Douglas County Food Policy Council leadership and chairs. Deidre. Ashley.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Quinn. Natalia. Eric, Enrique. Tyler. Cody.
Aye.
Emily, aye. All right, and then you want to finish up?
Okay, so we've talked a bit about the food system plan, and obviously it'll be ongoing work. We talked a little bit about the legislative priorities. So what again, Dietrich, you said you had something, not a terrible big deal.
No.
Okay, excellent. Just want to make sure. So we already also discussed that ongoing and continuing meetings, we are going to be bringing back member updates, would be the opportunity for members to say, next agenda, I want this to be paid attention to. And there's going to be this panel just so people can add a little postscripts to the meeting.
I would like to make a request, I'm saying, what the word repeating.
Right, but so I wanted to make sure to remind myself, if anything. So yes, I'd like to.
Honestly, we discussed at the last board meeting.
Right.
It would be lovely if we presented some of our findings from either ethnographic research, from our survey of City of Lawrence healthcare, how we engage food, or on our field experiments on presenting food. It seems like we got a lot of good input before we presented the last.
Isn't that something we talked about in the leadership retreat, that every meeting, one working group is going to present something they've done, they've been working on, they had success with?
Yes, we did. There are at least two things I can think of in the leadership retreat that we didn't get a chance to cover here. One was the policy of allocating budgets to the working groups we talked about. And then the other one is the working groups giving a little more time than rather than having like a 2-minute update, give a bigger chunk of time. So if you wanted to, we could say, let's start in. I am that working group chair. Am I ready to do that in March? Let's say.
Is that a really successful event?
Okay, so why don't we say that? Why don't we say we'll give March to water so we can get an update when those things are going on, and then we'll give April to forward, and then we'll start a sign up or that way people know in advance. So the last thing before we all adjourn is
Jamie, get out of here.
is anyone immediately interested in sitting in for Mark's leadership? Is anyone interested in being a vice chair for Mark's leadership? If not, that's also fine. We'll send a reminder and essentially we'll have that call open for leadership. So when we schedule it, we'll send a reminder, hey, if you're interested, this is when it will be. But I wanted to make sure before we adjourn. Okay, thanks, everybody. We had a lot to say today and we said a lot.
Just because it might make a difference. When do you guys do your leadership? Is it very?
It is right now it's a standing meeting of the second Friday or the third Friday.
I think it's the second Friday. Like we usually go like halfway through the month and that's just, so the thing is that.
What's Friday morning?
Friday mornings.
What we do right now, but that can change. I mean, that's the thing is it could change or it might need to change. It needs to go, well, I usually go off whatever Connie needs because my schedule is a lot more flexible. The 18th.
Yeah, and also just a heads up for next month. The Casey Healthy Kids is presenting.
And we're at a different
Oh, right.
location.
Yes, and we're at Public Works, which is actually a bit difficult to get to.
That's true.
I will put up flags and you follow the flags.
Yeah.
Yes, does anyone not know where Public Works is?
No.
So this Public Works, this is near the jail, right? This is where
Yes.
zoning and codes is.
Zoning
And so what you do is you go towards Tractor Supply. And so behind Tractor Supply, so you can pass Tractor Supply and go towards, what is the name of that teenage outdoor camp?
Oh, Connie.
Yeah, so before you get there, you can take a left and go behind Tractor Supply and you'll go past this neighborhood development and you go past it and you'll go past, and depending on which direction you come from, you'll wave to the jail, wave, and then you keep going and it's going to turn to gravel. And before it turns to gravel, you see this low slung building and it says County Public Works. But it's behind Tractor Supply.
I like south of Tractor Supply.
Is that where we're looking at?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
Is
happy
there public
to do
transportation to this building?
There actually is public transportation not to the building, but to the shelter.
Yeah, it's a walk out, but I kind of recommend to like buddy up.
Yeah, if we need to, we can. So it may be time to have a meeting, in addition, like when the agenda comes out, maybe it's time to have a little like, who needs transportation Excel sheet and say who's got room in cars, for reasons we have talked about. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Please,